Life is seasonal. Let it overflow give you infinite success. Reading by Audio Chapter Hub and published by Audio Chapter Hub. Introduction. There is a divine order humming beneath everything. You see it in the way the earth turns without your permission, how tides rise and fall without your command, how trees shed their leaves without panic, and how the sun returns after every dusk. Life, in its deepest and truest form, is not random. It is rhythmic. It is seasonal. And when we finally come into harmony with this truth, not just intellectually, but spiritually and emotionally, we unlock a kind of abundance that cannot be explained, only experienced. We tap into the flow that brings overflow. Most people chase abundance like it's a finish line or a one-time jackpot. But true abundance is not a destination. It is a way of living, a mindset, a trust in the divine cycles that govern all things. It is the realization that life is not always harvest, not always productivity, not always forward motion. Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it is release. Sometimes it is preparation. And when you learn to honor each season of your life, without fear or resistance, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to force the fruit, and you let it come to you. You let it multiply. You let it overflow. The phrase 100-fold is more than poetic. It is a principle embedded in the universe. In agriculture, it represents a yield far beyond the seed planet. In scripture, it reflects a supernatural return on what was sown in faith. In life, it symbolizes the blessing that comes when action, alignment, and timing meet. But before that harvest comes, there is always a season of sowing. A season of quiet. A season that looks empty, but is deeply full. This is the part that frustrates most people. We want the outcome without the process. The fruit without the root. The bloom without the wait. This book is not about manifesting instant wealth or claiming abundance with your words while denying the reality of your process. It's about teaching you how to align with the greater rhythm. It's about helping you identify your current season, honor it fully, and trust that every single one, yes, even the painful ones, has something vital to give you. Abundance is not something you stumble upon by accident. It's something you cultivate, like a garden, by respecting the laws that govern growth. Too often, we resent the very seasons designed to prepare us for overflow. We despise winter because it's cold, because things look dead, because nothing seems to move. But winter is when the roots go deepest. Winter is when the distractions fall away, and you can hear your soul again. We rush through spring, eager to see something bloom, forgetting that seeds need darkness and time to break open. We grow weary in summer, fatigued by effort and heat, forgetting that tending is a sacred work. We even fear harvest season, sometimes feeling unworthy of the return we've longed for. But in every one of these stages, there is a holy rhythm, a divine intelligence, a promise of more. You may be reading this in the middle of your own winter. You may feel stripped bare, uncertain, disconnected. Or maybe you're in a spring season, full of dreams, ideas, and new momentum, but unsure how to plant them wisely. Perhaps you're in summer, sweating under the weight of responsibility, not yet seeing the fruit you prayed for. Or maybe, just maybe, you're standing in autumn, with blessings dropping all around you, unsure what to do with so much goodness. Wherever you are, this book will help you see it clearly, name it truthfully, and move through it faithfully. One of the greatest shifts you can ever make is to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is the season teaching me? That is when you take your power back. That is when you stop resisting the natural order and start flowing with it. That is when you allow life, not your fear, not your ego, not your timeline, to guide you. And life, when trusted, gives generously. Let me say this plainly, there is no such thing as a wasted season. Every stretch of time you've lived, whether it looked fruitful or barren, joyful or sorrowful, contains something essential for your becoming. Your delays were not denials. Your pruning was not punishment. Your stillness was not stagnation. It was preparation. Life was working in layers, even when you couldn't see it. In these pages, I will walk with you through the spiritual, emotional, and even practical implications of living seasonally. You'll learn to recognize what season you're in, what each one asks of you, and how each stage contributes to a harvest beyond your imagination. You will unlearn the myths of constant hustle and overnight success. You'll begin to honor your own timing instead of comparing it to others. And you'll discover that abundance doesn't arrive when everything looks perfect. It arrives when you're aligned, rooted, and willing to receive. This book is an invitation, not to strive harder, but to trust deeper. To stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start living in step with the wisdom that surrounds you. Nature is not in a hurry, and yet everything gets done. Can you live with that kind of faith? Can you let go long enough to be held? Can you live with open hands, ready to give and ready to receive? If so, then you are ready to enter a life of overflow. Let's begin. For more information about the ebook version of this audio, check the video description or visit audiobooksoffice.com. Chapter 1, The Law of Seasons, Understanding Life's Rhythmic Pulse. There is a law written into the fabric of existence that no one can override, not kings, not scientists, not spiritual leaders or visionaries. It is the law of seasons. It governs the rising and falling of tides, the waxing and waning of the moon, the changing colors of the trees, and the unfolding story of every human life. This law is not theoretical or philosophical. It is observable. It is as practical as the changing temperature in the air and as spiritual as the quiet transformation of the soul. And yet, for all its presence and predictability, most people fight it, ignore it, or live in total confusion about where they are in its cycle. The law of seasons tells us that everything has a time to begin and a time to end, a time to move and a time to be still, a time to hold on and a time to let go. These are not simply poetic lines, they are truths that, when embraced, offer us a map to navigate life with less anxiety and more clarity. The stress we often feel is not because we lack purpose, talent, or opportunity, but because we are trying to bloom in winter, or rest in spring, or harvest in summer. When your internal rhythm is out of sync with your external season, friction grows. But when your mindset aligns with the actual season you are in, peace emerges. Power follows peace. And with peace, abundance is no longer a chase, it's a flow. You have a season for every stage of becoming. Think back on your own life, the times when things came together with such ease you wondered if the universe was conspiring in your favor, and the times when no matter what you did, nothing moved. There were periods of deep creativity and bold action, and others where you couldn't find the energy to even dream. There were moments of reaping rewards, and then years that felt like survival. At first glance, these ups and downs seem random, but they're not. They are the echo of something older than you, wiser than you. They are the proof that you are living a life governed not by luck or chaos, but by the same rhythm that governs the soil and the stars. The human tendency is to prefer harvest seasons. We crave results. We want evidence of progress, growth, success. We want to point to something and say, this is what I built, this is what I earned. But the harvest is only one part of the cycle, and ironically, it is the shortest. The harvest lasts weeks. The work that precedes it, the sowing, tending, waiting, can last months or even years. But because we do not recognize the seasons of life, we treat every moment like it should be harvest. We push ourselves constantly to produce. We guilt ourselves for resting. We feel ashamed of winter when our branches are bare. We think we're failing when in fact we're just between blooms. Understanding the law of seasons means making peace with the full spectrum of experience. It means trusting that not every day is meant for action. Some are meant for listening, for stillness, for reflection. It means recognizing that pain is not always punishment, and that delay is not the same as denial. Trees do not grow fruit year-round. Neither do you, but they are alive all year. So are you. Even in stillness, even in apparent dormancy, life is happening beneath the surface. When you live seasonally, you start to ask better questions. Instead of, why isn't this working? You ask, what season am I in? Instead of, what should I be doing right now? You ask, what is life asking of me in this moment? These are not passive questions. They are powerful ones. They anchor you in awareness. They allow you to move with the current instead of against it. When you're in winter and you try to force summer behavior, you burn out. When you're in spring and you refuse to plant, you miss your opportunity. When you're in summer and you get distracted, your garden suffers. But when you learn to read the signs of your own life, when you stop ignoring the clues your soul is giving you, you begin to move in harmony with what already wants to happen. The law of seasons also teaches patience. We live in a world of instant results, click, buy, post, respond, but soul work doesn't operate on demand. Soul work operates on depth. There is no shortcut to rootedness. There is no app that will fast-track your becoming. There is only the process, and the process takes time. But here is the gift. When you honor the timing of your life, you begin to receive what is yours without having to chase it. You become magnetic instead of frantic. You begin to draw the right people, the right opportunities, the right ideas, not by hustling endlessly, but by becoming ready. And readiness is seasonal. To walk in alignment with the law of seasons is to develop a sense of sacred timing. You begin to discern the difference between urgent and important, between delay and preparation, between resistance and rest. You stop blaming yourself for everything that hasn't yet manifested, and you start thanking life for preparing you to hold what is on its way. You start living not by the calendar of society, but by the calendar of your spirit. That's when life gets quieter, deeper, richer. You don't need constant stimulation or external validation to feel worthy. You know who you are, where you are, and what's coming. The law of seasons is not just a poetic metaphor. It is a wisdom framework for how to live, how to grow, how to thrive. It teaches you that life is not linear, but cyclical. That growth is not always visible. That your worth is not measured by your productivity. That rest is as sacred as work. That endings are not failures, they are transitions. That the emptiest seasons often precede the most abundant ones. When you trust the rhythm, you stop panicking in winter. You start planting with intention in spring. You give your full presence to the labor of summer. You harvest with open hands in autumn. And in doing so, you create a life that overflows, not once, but again and again, in season and out, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. A 100-fold life. And this is where the journey begins. Not with a step, but with a rhythm. Not with striving, but with trust. Chapter 2. Winter, the hidden blessing of stillness and stripping back. Winter is the most misunderstood season in the human experience. It is the one we resist, the one we try to shorten or escape. In a world obsessed with forward motion, measurable growth, and visible success, winter feels like failure. It feels like emptiness, isolation, or loss. But this is only because we have forgotten what winter is for. We've forgotten that beneath the frozen soil, life is still happening. Roots are strengthening. Old things are dying so new things can be born. Winter does not come to punish us. It comes to prepare us. Stillness is the gift of winter, and yet we treat it like a curse. We've been trained to fear quiet seasons. We've been told that if we're not building, achieving, or producing, we're wasting time. But the deeper truth is that winter is where your soul comes home to itself. It is where you stop performing and start listening. In winter, the noise falls away. The external distractions, the false identities, the compulsive busyness, they all lose their power. You are left with the essence of who you are, and that confrontation, though uncomfortable, is necessary for everything that follows. It is in winter that clarity begins. Not the kind of clarity that comes from charts, goals, or metrics, but the kind that arises from deep within. You start to see what you've been carrying that no longer belongs to you. You notice the thoughts that keep circling your mind without serving you. You become aware of the people, the habits, and even the dreams that were good for a time but have now expired. Winter forces a kind of internal inventory. It strips away the leaves, not to expose you, but to free you. Letting go is one of winter's hardest demands. We are creatures of attachment. We hold on to identities, relationships, roles, and routines long past their expiration date. But winter has no patience for what's no longer alive. It comes with a cold wind and shakes the branches until everything loose is gone. And though this process may feel like loss, it is, in truth, liberation. Not everything that once served you is meant to stay with you. Winter teaches you to surrender not only what you've outgrown, but what no longer has the strength to grow with you. And yet, this is not a season of despair. It is a season of deep, invisible progress. What appears barren above the surface is teeming with unseen movement below. Trees do not panic when their branches are empty. They do not question their worth because they are not blooming. They know who they are without needing to prove it. They trust the cycle. In winter, life is no less alive. It is simply preparing, gathering, browning. So must we. The human soul requires winter. Without these seasons, we would burn out from constant motion. We would become shallow from non-stop blooming. We would lose our roots in the frenzy of fruitfulness. Winter grounds us. It reminds us that we are not defined by our output. It brings us back to the truth that being is enough, that silence is sacred, that slowing down is not the enemy of growth, but its origin. The most powerful transformations do not happen in public. They happen in the quiet, in the stillness, in the places no one sees. But winter can also be lonely. It's a time when relationships are tested, when isolation creeps in, when the world outside seems to be moving without you. This loneliness is not punishment, it is reflection. It reveals who still stands with you when there is no fruit on your tree. It shows you the people who love you for who you are, not what you give. It also reveals the places within yourself that you have avoided. In the absence of distraction, you are invited to meet yourself again, without the noise of expectation. This is not an easy meeting, but it is one of the most healing. For those walking through a winter season now, know this: your life is not on hold. It is not regressing. It is not being punished. You are in a sacred pause, a holy hibernation. This is your time to restore, to reflect, to return to center. Do not rush it. Do not try to thaw what needs time to sleep. Every attempt to skip this season only delays the blessings of the next. Let yourself be bare. Let yourself rest. Let the cold teach you what only winter can teach. There are seeds being formed within you, seeds that need stillness before they break open. This is where your future is taking root. There is something profoundly spiritual about allowing yourself to do less, to be less visible, to pull away from the noise and sit with your own breath. In a world that equates value with visibility, winter is an act of rebellion. It is a return to truth. You are not your productivity. You are not your popularity. You are not your performance. You are a soul in process, and every process needs a winner. Do not fear it. Do not curse it. Bless it. Winter reminds you that life is not always growth in the way we define it. Sometimes growth is deeper, quieter, slower. Sometimes growth is grieving. Sometimes it is letting go. Sometimes it is simply surviving with grace. But every winter has a purpose. And when you honor it, you prepare yourself for a spring that will not just be beautiful, but rooted, resilient, and ready for overflow. Chapter 3. Spring Planting with Purpose and Renewed Faith. There comes a moment when the long silence begins to lift, when the chill in the air begins to soften, and something within you stirs. It is not always loud, nor is it always clear, but it is real. After a season of stillness, loss, or waiting, there is a subtle energy that returns, a sacred momentum, a whisper of becoming. This is spring, and while the world may still look barren in places, something new has begun. The question is whether you are willing to recognize it and move with it, or whether you will miss the moment because it does not look like what you expected. Spring is often romanticized as a season of beauty and ease, full of blossoms and light. But in truth, spring is demanding. It requires courage. It requires clarity. After all, it is in spring that the planting happens. And planting is not passive. It is an act of faith. It is messy, uncertain, and often uncomfortable. To plant is to commit. It is to say, I believe in something I cannot yet see. It is to take action in the dark. It is to place energy, time, and trust into a future that hasn't arrived. That makes spring one of the most important seasons of all, not because of what you harvest, but because of what you choose to sow. Many people walk into spring carrying the residue of winter. They carry fear, hesitation, self-doubt, or grief. And while winter offers a sacred time to process and release those things, spring requires that we now decide. What do we want to grow? What are we willing to nurture? What are we willing to believe in again? Spring does not let you avoid these questions. It invites you to hope again, not blindly, but bravely. It invites you to rise from the ashes of the season before and declare that you still believe in growth, even if things didn't work out the way you thought they would. It invites you to risk your heart again for something worth planting. The danger of spring is distraction. Because it feels like movement has returned, we're tempted to scatter our attention. We chase every idea, say yes to everything, begin without clear intention. But spring is not just about doing, it's about aligning. This is the time to plant with purpose. You cannot plant everything at once. You must choose. What matters now? What aligns with who you are becoming? What seeds carry the values, vision, and voice you want your future to reflect? To plant in spring without discernment is to invite a harvest of chaos later. You must be intentional. You must know what you want to grow before you place anything in the ground. And yet, planting is not glamorous. It is dirty work. You bend low. You dig deep. You get soil under your fingernails. You kneel. You sweat. There is no applause here. No spotlight. No instant reward. And because of that, many abandon the process. They want results faster than nature allows. But spring is a time to fall in love with the unseen. To love the effort itself. To believe that something holy is happening even when nothing has broken through the surface. Your job in spring is not to obsess over the outcome. Your job is to plant, to water, and to trust. This trust is essential, because no matter how carefully you plan, not every seed will take root. Some ideas will fail. Some relationships will not grow the way you hoped. Some doors will remain shut. But this does not mean the season is wasted. Every seed teaches something. Every step shapes you. Spring is not about perfection. It is about participation. It is about showing up. It is about saying yes to the process of new life, even if it comes with uncertainty. It is about staying in motion even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. And it is about forgiving yourself for the springs of the past that didn't bloom the way you imagined. One of the hidden gifts of spring is that it makes you a beginner again. You are starting over. That can feel frustrating or humbling, depending on your perspective. But there is beauty in being new to something, in returning to the soil with empty hands and an open heart. Spring offers you the chance to plant from a wiser place, from lessons learned in winter, from a more honest sense of who you are. You are not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. And that makes this spring more powerful than any before it. Spring also requires boundaries. Because so much feels possible again, you must be careful not to overextend. You must remember that not all soil is yours to tend. Not every opportunity is aligned. Not every voice deserves your attention. This is a time to protect your energy, to guard the ground where your most sacred seeds are planted. The world may pull at you in 1,000 directions, but you must return to your center and ask, what is mine to do? What is mine to grow? What future am I nurturing with the choices I make today? There is a sacred confidence that comes with planting in spring. It is not the bravado of certainty, but the quiet power of alignment. It is knowing that you are doing your part and trusting the rest to forces beyond your control. It is releasing the pressure to make everything happen and embracing the grace of co-creation. You don't have to carry it all. You just have to plant, to tend, and to believe that the rhythm of life will do what it has always done. That what is planted with love, intention, and alignment will yield more than you can imagine. So if you find yourself in a spring season, if life is nudging you towards something new, if doors are opening, if ideas are stirring, do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not stall out in fear. Take the step, plant the seed, write the words, make the call. Say yes, even if your voice shakes, even if the ground looks dry, even if winter still lingers in your memory. Your future is waiting to take root, but nothing grows if you do not plant. Spring may not promise you immediate results, but it does promise you this. If you show up now, fully and faithfully, you are participating in the miracle of overflow before it ever becomes visible. You are becoming someone who trusts the process, honors the timing, and sows with both hands open. And that kind of person always reaps more than they sow. Chapter 4. Summer. Tending the garden with patience and persistence. Summer is the season where the weight of your choices begins to show. The seeds have been planted, the ground has been broken, and now comes the work of tending. It is a season full of motion, effort, and slow, steady growth. Unlike spring, which carries the freshness of beginnings, summer is about the grind. The beauty of potential has given way to the reality of process. And this is where many lose heart, not because the dream isn't still alive, but because the dream now demands something more than inspiration. It asks for consistency. It asks for faith without visible reward. It asks you to show up again and again, even when the sun is hot, the weeds are many, and the fruit is not yet ripe. Tending is not glamorous. It is rarely noticed. It often feels repetitive. Water, pull weeds, protect from pests, repeat. This is the work of stewardship. You are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are in the middle of it. And that middle space can be deceiving. It lacks the excitement of newness and the satisfaction of harvest. But what it lacks in thrill, it makes up for in impact. Because summer is where the roots deepen. Summer is where character is formed. Summer is where what you planted is tested and refined. The soil has already received your intention, now it asks for your commitment. Patience becomes your greatest asset in this season. The temptation will be to rush the process, to force results, to demand proof that your effort is working. But growth, real growth, doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to presence. You cannot yell at a tree and make it bear fruit faster. You cannot anxiously tug at a sprout and expect it to stretch taller. The laws of life do not answer to urgency. They answer to rhythm. And the rhythm of summer is one of slow becoming. It requires that you keep showing up, not with frantic energy, but with steady care. This kind of care builds trust in yourself. You begin to see that your presence alone carries power. That your faithfulness in the unseen days is what prepares you to handle the visible ones. Summer will test your boundaries. It will reveal how much energy you've given to things that don't nourish you. The more you tend your own garden, the more you'll notice where you've been tending everyone else's. You'll feel the fatigue of people-pleasing, overextending, and scattering your time across too many commitments. Summer invites you to reclaim your focus. You do not have infinite water. You cannot protect every plant. You must choose what matters. You must decide what gets your time and what does not. This is not selfishness. It is wisdom. Everything that grows with strength grows with limits. This season also calls for a deeper kind of trust, not just in the process, but in yourself. You'll begin to wonder if you planted the right things. You'll second-guess the dream. You'll be tempted to abandon what you've started because it's taking longer than you hoped. But this is the moment to anchor yourself. Growth often looks like nothing is happening until suddenly, everything happens at once. The most important shifts occur underground. Summer will ask you to stay faithful without feedback. To pour into your work, your vision, your healing, without applause or external validation. And in doing so, you grow the capacity to hold the abundance that is coming, not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of person who can sustain it. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a pathway to peace. When you build habits that nourish your purpose, when you consistently act in alignment with your values, when you take small steps with integrity, you stop relying on motivation. You stop depending on inspiration. You learn to move even when the feelings are absent. That is how things are built. That is how overflow is made. Through the kind of quiet repetition that nobody sees, until one day they do. And by then, you've already become someone new. But summer is not all toil. There is joy to be found in the daily tending. There is something sacred about caring for what you once only imagined. You may not be harvesting yet, but you are witnessing life emerge. A small sprout pushing through the soil, a new leaf unfolding, a sign that what you planted is alive. These moments are not insignificant. They are confirmation. They are reminders that your effort is not in vain. That even if you can't yet taste the fruit, it is coming, slowly, surely, in its own time. Still, the intensity of summer is real. The sun beats down. The labor can be heavy. Fatigue will visit, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. That's why rest must be woven into this season, not as escape, but as strategy. You cannot pour endlessly without replenishment. Just as the earth requires rain and shade, so do you. Build rhythms that honor your energy. Say no without guilt. Sleep, breathe, celebrate small wins. Pause to remember why you started. This is how you endure the heat without burning out. Comparison is especially dangerous in summer. When you are laboring in your own field, it is easy to look across and measure your progress against someone else's. But every garden grows on its own timeline. Some plants take longer to mature. Some bear fruit only after multiple cycles. Trust your soil. Trust your season. Resist the urge to uproot something just because it hasn't blossomed at the same speed as your neighbors. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. Summer demands persistence, not perfection. There will be setbacks, unexpected storms, moments of discouragement, things that wither despite your best effort. Let them pass through you without shaking your foundation. Resilience is not about never struggling. It's about remembering that the struggle doesn't define the outcome. Keep tending, keep watering, keep protecting your vision, even when it feels small, even when it feels slow. You are not just growing something, you are becoming someone. And that transformation is far more valuable than any fruit your labor might produce. So if you find yourself in a summer season right now, do not despise the work. Do not rush the process. Embrace the daily rituals of care. Honor your boundaries. Give your presence to what matters. And trust, with every fiber of your being, that the harvest will come not because you forced it, but because you were faithful. Summer is not easy, but it is sacred. And what you build in this heat will last far beyond the season that produced it. Chapter 5, Autumn, Harvesting the Overflow with Gratitude. There is a stillness that comes over the land in autumn, a slowing that feels neither like the bright energy of spring nor the intensity of summer. It is a sacred hush, a deep inhale before the next exhale of release. The light begins to soften. The air carries a certain weight. And everywhere you look, life begins to show what it has been working on behind the scenes. Fruits ripen. Fields are heavy with grain. Trees blaze with color. This is the season of harvest, and it is one of life's greatest gifts. not only because it offers visible reward, but because it demands gratitude, reflection, and wisdom in equal measure. Many people long for harvest, but few understand how to receive it. We pray for increase, for abundance, for multiplication, but when it finally arrives, we often find ourselves overwhelmed or underprepared. Harvest is not passive. It is a season that calls you to attention. It asks you to gather, to steward, to share. It asks you to celebrate the work that has been done, not just the work of your hands, but the quiet labor of your heart. Harvest is the evidence of your faithfulness. It is the moment when what you once hoped for, what you once planted in trembling, begins to appear in your hands. But if you are not careful, you may miss it. You may be so conditioned by the striving of summer that you cannot pause long enough to receive what has come. You may still be looking at what didn't work, what didn't bloom, what didn't go according to plan. Harvest requires a shift in focus. It asks you to see what is here, not just what is missing. It asks you to gather with open hands and a grateful heart. To receive fully, you must first recognize that you are receiving. Gratitude is the posture that makes room for overflow. This season also brings the clarity of perspective. With the fruit now in your hands, you begin to see the full arc of the cycle. You remember how uncertain it felt in the planting, how tiring it was to tend, how tempted you were to give up. And yet, here you are, holding something real. That realization carries weight. It humbles you. It reminds you that while your effort mattered deeply, so did the grace that surrounded you, the timing you didn't control, the mysteries you'll never fully explain. Abundance is not merely a product of hard work. It is a dance between intention and surrender, action and trust. It is the evidence of alignment. Harvest also brings with it the responsibility of distribution. What you receive is not just for you. Your overflow is meant to nourish others. It becomes seed for someone else's spring. It becomes provision for those who are still in their summer toil or winter waiting. In the economy of abundance, nothing is hoarded. Nothing is wasted. What you share multiplies. What you withhold diminishes. The more open your hands, the more room they have to receive again. Gratitude without generosity becomes self-centered. True thanksgiving leads to giving. This is not to say you must give everything away or exhaust yourself in the process. Generosity is not martyrdom. It is wisdom. It is knowing what part of your harvest is for celebration, what part is for storage, and what part is meant to be sown into the lives of others. There is no single formula. The only requirement is honesty. You must listen. You must discern. And you must be willing to let the flow continue. What comes through you will not stay with you. It will either bless or stagnate. That choice is yours. But even in abundance, autumn carries a sense of melancholy. The trees burn brightly before letting go. The fields are stripped clean after the last reap. There is beauty, yes, but also a quiet goodbye. And this is where many become confused. How can fullness feel so close to loss? How can increase carry the ache of something ending? But this too is the nature of the cycle. Every harvest contains a hint of winter. Every completion points to a new beginning. Autumn teaches us to receive and release at once. To celebrate while preparing to let go. To carry joy and reverence in equal measure. You may find yourself surprised by how emotional this season feels. Not just happy or relieved, but deeply moved. That's because harvest is not just about fruit. It's about everything the fruit represents. The pain you overcame. The risks you took. The moments you stayed when leaving would have been easier. The prayers you whispered when no one knew how tired you were. Harvest honors the whole journey. It's not just the result, it's the recognition. And that recognition makes the season feel sacred. Yet there is one danger in autumn that must be addressed, the temptation to forget. When abundance becomes normal, gratitude fades. When blessings become familiar, we take them for granted. Do not let the fruits of your life become background noise. Do not let the very things you once begged for become the things you now complain about. Keep your eyes open. Keep your heart tender. Keep a list, if you must. Name every good thing. Gratitude is a discipline, not just a feeling. It protects you from entitlement. It grounds you in perspective. And it keeps the cycle of abundance flowing. There will be seasons when the harvest is smaller than you hoped. There will be others when it overwhelms you with its goodness. Regardless of scale, every harvest is worthy of honor. Celebrate what has come. Give thanks for what it taught you. Reflect on what to carry forward and what to release. And do so without judgment. This is your harvest. It is a reflection of where you are, not who you are. Do not measure your worth by the size of your yield. Measure it by the honesty of your effort, the alignment of your actions, and the integrity of your process. Autumn is the reward, but it is also the reminder. It shows you what's possible. It reminds you that faithfulness bears fruit. It gives you a glimpse of the life you're building, not just externally, but internally. A life where you no longer chase meaning in temporary highs, but find it in the steady rhythm of becoming. A life where every season has value, every effort is weight, and every blessing is received with reverence. As the air cools and the days shorten, let your heart remain open. Receive what is yours, release what is done, and rest in the knowing that what you have gathered is only the beginning. For in the economy of abundance, every harvest holds the seed of the next cycle. And as you honor this one, you prepare the way for a new season of overflow. Chapter 6. Letting go of scarcity. Nature doesn't hoard, and neither should you. Scarcity is not just an economic condition, it is a mindset, a lens through which many people view the world and their place in it. It whispers that there is never enough. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough love, not enough opportunity. It tells you to hold on tightly, to control what you have, to fear loss as if it were the end of all good things. Scarcity trains you to think small, to live closed, to compete instead of collaborate. And worst of all, it convinces you that lack is the most honest version of reality. But this belief, though common, is not rooted in truth. It is not reflected in the natural world. It is not how life was designed to flow. Look at nature. The ocean never holds back its waves. The sun does not ration its light. Trees produce seed after seed, leaf after leaf, not in fear of running out, but in rhythm with abundance. Fruit falls to the ground. Flowers bloom and wither. Rivers run freely. There is no hoarding in nature. No obsession with accumulation. No panic about tomorrow. Nature gives, sheds, surrenders, and continues to flourish. When a tree drops its leaves in autumn, it does not do so out of fear. It does it because it trusts the process. Because it knows new leaves will come. It knows that death makes space for life. That emptiness invites renewal. That letting go is part of increase. But somewhere along the way, we unlearned this. We became afraid of letting go. We clung to jobs that drain us, relationships that deplete us, ideas that limit us. We held on to stories about ourselves that no longer serve our becoming. We confused control with safety and possession with peace. Scarcity became our normal, not because it is truth, but because it was taught to us, passed down through generations, shaped by trauma, shaped by survival, shaped by systems designed to make us feel small. And yet, deep inside, we know better. Something in us aches for freedom, not just freedom from poverty, but freedom from the belief that we must always struggle to have enough. Letting go of scarcity is not easy. It will feel unfamiliar. You may even mistake it for recklessness. But abundance requires space, and space requires release. If your hands are full of fear, they cannot receive. If your schedule is packed with what no longer matters, there is no room for what does. If your heart is tethered to what is already ended, it cannot rise to meet what's beginning. The practice of letting go is not a loss, it is an invitation. You are not being asked to live with less. You are being invited to live with intention. To trust that what you surrender will be replaced by something more aligned, more life-giving, more expansive. Scarcity often masks itself as wisdom. It says, be careful, be realistic, don't expect too much. It poses as protection. But real wisdom does not restrict, it liberates. Real wisdom is not fear dressed up in logic. It is faith grounded in discernment. It is knowing when to hold on and when to release. It is understanding that security is not found in accumulation, but in alignment. You are not secure because you control everything. You are secure because you trust something larger than yourself. Because you know you are connected to a source that never runs dry. One of the most radical things you can do in a world ruled by scarcity is to live generously. Not just with money, but with your time, your energy, your attention, your creativity, your compassion. Generosity says, I have enough. And because I have enough, I can give. But even more than that, generosity trains your mind to see abundance. Every time you give freely, you interrupt the story that says you need to keep more to be okay. You start to believe, deeply and truly, that more is always on the way. Not because you are striving harder, but because you are open, because you are in flow. Releasing scarcity also means releasing comparison. Because at its root, comparison is about lack. It sees what someone else has and decides it is a threat to your own becoming. But in the economy of abundance, someone else's blessing is not a theft, it is evidence. It is a sign that good things are moving. It is proof that if life can overflow there, it can overflow here too. The problem is never that someone else has more. The problem is the belief that what you have is not enough. But this belief dissolves when you realize that abundance is not about having everything. It's about receiving what is yours and trusting that it will always be enough for the season you're in. Letting go of scarcity also requires letting go of control. It means you must stop trying to manipulate outcomes, stop micromanaging timelines, stop forcing doors that were never meant to open. This is not passivity. This is surrender. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. It is placing your life into the hands of a greater wisdom. It is trusting that you do not have to make everything happen on your own, that you are supported, that the same power that governs the tides and turns the seasons also guides your life with precision. You may feel resistance as you begin to release old patterns. That's natural. Scarcity has been a survival strategy. It has kept you safe in certain ways, but it has also kept you small. It has kept you reactive instead of creative, defensive instead of open, tight-fisted instead of overflowing. As you learn to let go, be gentle with yourself. These are not just mental shifts, they are cellular ones. You are reconditioning your nervous system to live in peace, not panic, to expect good things, to move with trust, not tension. Abundance is not a fantasy. It is not a luxury reserved for the few. It is a reality that begins the moment you decide to see the world differently. When you start looking for enough, you begin to see enough everywhere. When you bless what you have, it begins to multiply. When you give from a place of love, you always have more to give. This is the law of overflow, and nature is its most faithful teacher. Let the trees show you how to release without fear. Let the river show you how to flow without clinging. Let the flowers show you how to bloom without worry. Life is not trying to withhold from you. It is trying to flow through you. But first, you must open your hands. You must stop hoarding. You must trust that nothing truly meant for you will ever pass you by. Chapter 7. Overflow is not luck. it's alignment. When people witness abundance in someone's life, whether it's success, peace, meaningful relationships, creative fulfillment, or material prosperity, they often reduce it to luck. They point to timing, to coincidence, to opportunity. They say things like, they were in the right place at the right time, or some people just get all the breaks. But what they rarely recognize is the deeper truth. Overflow is not a result of random fortune. It is the natural outcome of alignment. It is what happens when who you are, what you believe, how you act, and what season you're in all come into harmony. The person who seems lucky is often simply living in sync with their purpose, their values, and the timing of their life. Alignment is not a vague spiritual idea. It is deeply practical. It means your decisions reflect your priorities. Your energy flows toward what truly matters. Your yes are rooted in conviction, and your no's are clear and unapologetic. It means you are not chasing someone else's dream or following someone else's path. You are walking in your own direction, guided by your own truth. When you are aligned, your actions are no longer scattered. Your life becomes focused, intentional, and deeply effective. That effectiveness is what creates overflow, not just the overflow of results, but the overflow of inner peace, clarity, and joy. Disalignment, on the other hand, is exhausting. It creates friction in every direction. You say yes when you mean no. You pursue goals that don't resonate. You stay in places that drain you, hoping they will change. You ignore your body's signals, your intuition's warnings, your soul's whisper. This misalignment creates leaks, emotional, mental, spiritual. You pour energy into things that cannot return it. You become tired, resentful, disconnected. No matter how hard you work, it never feels like enough, because deep down, you know you are out of step with your own truth. You may be moving fast, but you're not moving forward. The journey toward overflow begins with coming back to center, not back to the world's version of success, but back to yourself. Alignment requires honest inventory. What are you building and why? Who are you trying to impress? Whose expectations are you carrying? Where in your life are you forcing, pretending, striving? These are hard questions, but they are essential. Because until you get honest about what's misaligned, you will continue to chase outcomes that feel empty when you get them. Overflow isn't just about getting more. It's about becoming more of who you really are. Alignment also means honoring your current season. You cannot force overflow in a winter. You cannot harvest in a spring. So much frustration comes from expecting results out of season. But alignment means knowing what season you are in and choosing actions that match it. If it is your season to rest, then rest becomes productive. If it is your season to build, then building becomes sacred. You stop fighting the rhythm and start working with it. This doesn't mean you sit passively. It means your actions are rooted in wisdom, not pressure. You move not from fear, but from clarity. A life of alignment is not a life without challenge, but it is a life without unnecessary resistance. It is a life where your inner world supports your outer world. Your beliefs support your behaviors. Your values support your decisions. Your relationships support your growth. And in that kind of environment, abundance begins to flourish, not because you forced it, but because you became fertile ground for it. You stopped leaking energy in all directions and started directing it toward what truly matters. That concentrated energy is powerful. It multiplies. It attracts. It expands. This kind of overflow cannot be manufactured with hustle. It is cultivated through presence. When you are present with your life, truly present, you begin to see what was always there but overlooked. You notice small opportunities, sacred moments, subtle shifts. You stop needing dramatic breakthroughs and start appreciating quiet miracles. You begin to see that the more aligned you are, the less effort it takes to receive. Not because you're doing less, but because you're no longer doing what drains you. You are no longer moving out of habit or fear. You are moving from essence. One of the myths that keeps people trapped in misalignment is the idea that sacrifice is noble. That the more you suffer, the more worthy you are. That denying your own needs and boundaries is a sign of maturity. But true maturity is not about martyrdom, it's about discernment. It's about knowing where to give, where to stay, where to go, and when to stop. Misalignment often disguises itself as loyalty or humility, but in truth, it is often fear of change. The aligned life asks you to make bold, sometimes uncomfortable choices. To walk away from what no longer fits. To say no to what you once said yes to. To trust that when you release what is not yours, what is truly meant for you will find you. The person who lives in overflow is not always the one working the hardest. Often, it is the one working the most honestly. The one who has stopped performing. The one who has come home to themselves. They have boundaries. They have vision. They know what they value. They know how to protect their peace. They are not immune to stress or struggle, but they are no longer ruled by it. They have learned that alignment is not just a principle, it is a path. It is how they make every decision, engage every relationship, and measure every opportunity. And what they find is that as they walk this path, doors open, connections deepen, creativity increases, joy returns, not because they are luckier than anyone else, but because they are no longer blocking their own flow. They're in rhythm, they're in step, they're in sync with the greater order of things. Life is no longer a battle, it is a conversation. And in that conversation, abundance is no longer a distant goal, it is a living, breathing reality. So if you desire overflow, stop asking how to get more. Start asking how to align more, how to come back to your center, how to let go of what pulls you away from it. how to live your life in such a way that it becomes fertile ground for all that is meant for you. When you do that, you'll find that abundance is not a finish line. It's a frequency, and alignment is how you tune into it. Chapter 8, The 100-Fold Return, What It Really Means. There is something deeply stirring about the idea of a 100-fold return. It's a phrase that shows up in ancient texts and spiritual teachings, often spoken with reverence, often misunderstood by those who hear it. For many, it conjures images of sudden wealth, of dreams manifesting instantly, of one action yielding exponential results. It's tempting to interpret it that way because the human mind is naturally drawn to magnitude. We want big outcomes, big breakthroughs, big rewards for our labor. But the true meaning of the 100-fold return is not found in the numbers. It is found in the nature of abundance itself. It is not a formula to manipulate. It is a promise of multiplication, but only when the conditions are right. A 100-fold return begins with one thing, a seed that is planted in trust, nurtured in obscurity, watered with consistency, and surrendered to timing. No matter how rich the soil or how favorable the season, the seed must still die to what it was before it can become what it was meant to be. That is the first truth most people overlook when they chase increase. You cannot receive a multiplied harvest if you are unwilling to release the seed. You cannot hold the return if you are unwilling to let go of the starting point. This surrender is not glamorous. It does not come with guarantees. It asks for a kind of faith that persists in silence, a belief that what you are doing now matters even when there is no immediate evidence. The 100-fold return is not simply about results. It is about resonance. It is what happens when your effort, intention, timing, and values align with the greater rhythm of life. It is what happens when you pour into something with your whole heart, not from a place of desperation, but from clarity and conviction. It is not just about working hard. It is about working right. It is about pouring yourself into what is yours to build, yours to offer, yours to become. And when you do that, not once, but again and again, you begin to see return in places you never expected. Opportunities come, connections form, peace arrives, the path opens, and what comes back to you is not always measurable, but it is always meaningful. One of the most overlooked aspects of the 100-fold principle is that it rarely returns in the same form it was given. You may sow kindness and reap connection. You may sow generosity and reap favor. You may sow discipline and reap inner peace. The return may not come from the place you planted it. It may arrive through a door you didn't know existed. This is why control blocks abundance. Because the moment you start dictating exactly how and when your return must arrive, you limit the creative intelligence of the universe. The 100-fold life is not one of micromanagement. It is one of open-handed expectation. It is marked by gratitude for the process and trust in the mystery. Still, let us not shy away from the tangible side of return. Sometimes the 100-fold harvest really is that dramatic. A single decision to change your daily habits can, over time, transform your health, your mind, and your energy. A single step of courage, launching the business, leaving the job, ending the relationship, can open doors that alter your future in irreversible ways. A single conversation can lead to a connection that shifts your destiny. The seeds we sow carry more weight than we think, and the soil we place them in, our mindset, our environment, our relationships, determines how well they grow. When you begin to treat your life as fertile ground and your choices as seeds, you stop living randomly. You become intentional. You become aware that every moment carries the potential to multiply. But what many people miss is the cost that precedes the harvest. The 100-fold return does not come without seasons of sacrifice. There will be times when you pour out and feel emptied. When you give and see no reciprocation. When you labor and see no fruit. These are the most critical moments because they test your commitment. Will you keep showing up when the field is silent? Will you keep trusting when the forecast shifts? Will you stay rooted when the rain doesn't come? The 100-fold return is not for those who dabble. It is for those who endure. Not with bitterness, but with expectancy. Not with control, but with devotion. Gratitude is another key. People often believe that gratitude follows blessing, but in truth, gratitude precedes it. Gratitude creates the atmosphere for increase. It multiplies what is placed within it. When you learn to give thanks not just for what you have, but for the opportunity to give, to serve, to try again, you activate something powerful. You align yourself with the energy of abundance. You shift your posture from scarcity to sufficiency. And when you do that consistently, you prepare your soul to hold more, because you have proven you will honor what you already hold. There is also the matter of stewardship. A multiplied harvest is only as valuable as your ability to manage it. Overflow without order becomes chaos. What will you do with the increase when it comes? Who will benefit from it? What systems have you built to hold it, protect it, distribute it? The 100-fold return is not meant to sit stagnant. It is meant to flow. If you are not ready to move with the increase, you may find it slipping through your fingers. That is why preparation is part of abundance. The harvest begins long before the fruit is visible. It begins in how you think, how you plan, how you live when no one is watching. In the end, the 100-fold return is not about superstition or special favor. It is about alignment with the principles that govern growth. It is about planning with purpose, showing up with integrity, waiting with patience, receiving with gratitude, and giving with joy. It is about becoming the kind of person who can hold more, not just in your hands, but in your heart, 100-fold. Life is not measured by possessions. It is measured by fullness. Fullness of purpose, of joy, of love, of peace, of impact. If you desire that kind of life, start now. Plant with intention. Give with freedom. Release the outcome. Watch how your life begins to shift, not overnight, but consistently, quietly, powerfully. This is not magic. It is law. What you sow in alignment, you will reap in overflow. And sometimes, that return will be so expansive, so rich, so abundant, that you will look back and realize it was never about luck at all. It was about becoming a living field, open and ready for the kind of harvest that only comes when you decide to live fully aligned. Chapter 9. Faith in the in-between, trusting what you cannot see. There is a stretch of time in every journey that feels like a void. You are no longer who you were, and not yet who you are becoming. You've let go of the old but haven't received the new. You've planted your seeds, spoken your prayers, taken the steps, made the changes, but the results haven't arrived. This is the in-between. The space between sowing and harvest, between vision and manifestation, between obedience and outcome. It is one of the hardest places to be, because it demands faith without proof. You cannot touch it, you cannot see it, you cannot control it. But it is here, in this invisible stretch of time, that everything is being shaped. The in-between season has a quiet ache. It is not the pain of obvious loss or the thrill of obvious gain. It is subtler, slower, the ache of waiting, the ache of not knowing. It is where impatience begins to rise, where doubt creeps in like fog, where the temptation to go back to the familiar becomes strong. It is also the place where most people abandon the process, not because they didn't believe in the beginning, but because they expected instant feedback. The modern world has trained us to expect fast answers. Tap, scroll, click, refresh. But the deep things of life, growth, healing, breakthrough, purpose, do not move at that speed. They operate in seasons, not seconds. In the in-between, it's easy to believe nothing is happening. But that assumption is rarely true. Just because something is not visible does not mean it's not in motion. Think of seeds under the soil. For weeks, maybe months, there is no evidence above ground. But underground, the roots are forming, the shell is breaking, the seed is becoming something it has never been. All of this happens before the first green shoot appears. The work of transformation is almost always invisible first. The fruit takes time, the bloom takes time, and the more powerful the change, the deeper the unseen preparation required. Faith is what carries you through the in-between. Not blind belief, but chosen trust. The kind of trust that says, even when I don't see the path, I believe there is one. Faith is not about pretending to be certain. It is about deciding to stay steady even when you're not. It is the quiet determination to keep watering the seed, to keep showing up, to keep moving forward, even when your emotions waver. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable guides in uncertain seasons. They rise and fall with the moment. Faith, on the other hand, anchors you. It gives you a compass when the map is unclear. One of the most dangerous things about the in-between is that it often looks like failure. Nothing is growing. Nothing is changing. You question yourself. You question your timing. You question your worth. But the truth is, the in-between is not a dead space. It is a wound space. It is where new life is gestating, forming, preparing to emerge. And just like in pregnancy, you cannot rush the delivery without risk. You cannot force the next chapter without weakening its foundation. The in-between asks you to surrender your demand for immediacy and embrace the slower, sacred pace of becoming. This season will test your memory. You'll need to remember why you started. You'll need to remember the word you received, the vision that lit you up, the clarity that first moved you. Because memory fuels persistence. When results are not available, you must rely on remembrance. Go back to your journals, your moments of breakthrough, your quiet whispers of assurance. These are your anchors. These are your reminders that just because you can't see it now doesn't mean it's not still true. What is planted in truth cannot be undone by silence. The in-between also refines your motives. It reveals what you really want and why you want it. Are you chasing validation or living from conviction? Are you moving from pressure or from purpose? Delay has a way of peeling back layers. It shows you what's driving you. It teaches you to let go of needing approval, recognition, or constant signs. It strips away the noise and brings you face to face with the raw core of your desire. When you can stand in the silence and still say yes, you've entered the realm of depth. This kind of yes cannot be shaken. It's not emotional hype. It's not public performance. It's an internal decision, quiet but powerful. There will be voices, both external and internal, that urge you to give up, to settle, to shift course, to reinterpret the waiting as a sign that you missed it. But often, the presence of delay is not proof of error. It's proof of depth. Quick things can be built fast. Deep things cannot. If you want something that lasts, you must let it take the time it needs to form. That means not just tolerating the in-between, but honoring it. Seeing it not as an obstacle, but as a necessary part of the process. You are being stretched in this space, not to break you, but to build your capacity. Every day you continue without proof, your faith grows stronger. Every time you choose to speak life over what looks like emptiness, Your voice becomes more powerful. Every moment you resist the urge to quit and instead rest and trust, you become more aligned with the rhythm of true abundance. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are not being forgotten. You are being refined. The harvest will come. The door will open. The clarity will return. But who you are becoming in the meantime is perhaps the greatest miracle of all. The in-between is not just about getting through. It's about growing through. It's where your roots go deeper. It's where your soul matures. It's where your character catches up to your calling. And when the time comes, when the first signs of breakthrough appear, you will be ready, not just to receive, but to sustain. Because you didn't rush it, you honored it, you trusted what you could not see, and now what you trusted is becoming visible. Chapter 10, When the Season Hurts, Finding Meaning in Delay, Loss, or Setback. There are seasons in life that arrive like storms. Uninvited, unexpected, unrelenting. Everything you thought was certain begins to tremble. What you counted on crumbles. What once brought joy now brings confusion. The momentum you had halts without warning, and no matter how hard you try to will it back, it stays still. Delay becomes a daily companion. Loss, whether subtle or shattering, begins to shape your days. Setbacks multiply, and you start to wonder if the season will ever end. These are not the chapters we dream about. These are the ones we try to avoid, but they are the ones that shape us in ways no other season can. Pain has a strange authority. It enters without permission, rearranges the furniture of your soul, and asks questions you may not be ready to answer. It interrupts your pace, your plans, your projections. But within it is the power to reveal. When the season hurts, it strips away the illusion of control. It shows you what you've been holding on to too tightly. It forces you to look at your attachments, people, outcomes, roles, identities, and ask yourself whether they are still true, still whole, still necessary. Pain will not let you live in pretense. It will not let you ignore what needs to be healed. It has a way of bringing you face to face with the deepest parts of yourself. Most people do not grow in life as easy. Comfort rarely provokes transformation. It's in the waiting rooms, the wildernesses, the collapses, and the rejections that the soul begins to expand. Not because hardship is inherently good, but because it reveals what is real. You discover your capacity. You learn the difference between temporary emotion and long-term truth. You begin to see that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the willingness to continue in the middle of it. Growth in painful seasons is rarely loud. It doesn't happen in a rush of insight or a flash of clarity. It happens in slow steps, small choices, silent prayers. It happens when you decide to get out of bed even though you want to disappear. When you choose to believe in a future you can't yet see. There is a different kind of abundance that comes in painful seasons, not the abundance of possessions or achievements, but the abundance of wisdom, depth, clarity, and resilience. These seasons prune you, and pruning is always a sign of preparation. In nature, pruning removes what is no longer bearing fruit so that what remains can grow stronger. The same is true for the human soul. What is being cut away may have once been beautiful, but it's no longer useful. It may have once served a purpose, but that purpose has been fulfilled. Letting it go feels like loss, but in time you will see that it was clearing space for something more aligned. The hardest part of any painful season is not knowing how long it will last. If you had a timeline, you could plan, you could prepare, but pain doesn't give you one. It simply arrives and stays as long as it needs to. This uncertainty can make you feel powerless, but it is also where transformation begins. Because when you cannot rely on answers, you learn to rely on presence. You learn to be in your life as it is, not just as you wish it to be. You stop negotiating with reality and start making peace with it. That peace doesn't come all at once. It builds slowly, like light returning to a room that's been dark too long. But it builds. And when it does, it gives you something stronger than optimism. It gives you hope. And hope is a seed. It's not loud, but it is alive. Delay, too, is often misinterpreted. We equate it with failure or divine silence. But delay is often a gesture of protection. Not everything is ready when we want it. Sometimes we are not ready. We think we are, but life sees what we cannot. It sees what needs more time to form. It sees what will collapse under the weight of premature success. What looks like a door slammed shut may be a door being reinforced for the blessing it's meant to hold. You are not being denied. You are being aligned. And alignment sometimes takes longer than we expect. The waiting is not empty. It is not wasted. It is doing work you cannot see yet, but you will. Setbacks, too, carry wisdom. They break our momentum, but they often redirect us to the deeper path. They remind us that progress is not always linear. That what looks like failure may actually be a divine correction. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in history came after seasons of crushing defeat. What changed the outcome wasn't the absence of failure. It was the refusal to let the failure be the final word. In every setback lies a choice. Will you let this define you or refine you? Will you let it harden your heart or deepen your understanding? Will you let it steal your voice or teach you how to use it? No painful season lasts forever. The very nature of life is change. The wheel turns. The light shifts. What feels endless today will one day be memory. But while you are in it, do not rush through it. Do not deny your grief or mute your questions. Feel it fully. Honor it truthfully. But also, do not let it define your identity. You are not what you lost. You are not your delay. You are not your setback. you are still becoming, still growing, still called, still loved, even in the pain, especially in the pain. In time, you will look back and see that this season, though heavy, though confusing, though full of questions, birthed something unshakable in you. You will not be the same, and that is the point. You will be more grounded, more whole, more aligned. Not because you avoided the hard parts, but because you walked through them. You showed up when you had no guarantee. You stayed open when it would have been easier to shut down. You trusted something greater than your understanding. And that kind of trust always yields fruit. Chapter 11. Generosity as a spiritual law, giving into your overflow. Generosity is often mistaken for an act of charity or a rare gesture of kindness, something we do when we feel emotionally stirred or financially comfortable. But in truth, generosity is not occasional. It is a law, a rhythm, a current that flows through the fabric of life itself. It is one of the most reliable paths into abundance, not because it buys you favor or earns you reward, but because it proves that you trust there will always be more. Generosity is not a performance, it is a posture. It is the decision to live with open hands, even when the world teaches you to close your fists. It is the choice to believe that giving does not reduce you, but refines you. Real generosity begins where fear ends. It begins the moment you stop asking, "What if I run out?" and start believing, "What I have is enough to share." You do not need to be wealthy to be generous. You do not need a perfect life or extra time or overflowing energy. You need willingness. You need a heart that understands that giving is not loss. It is participation in a greater flow. Life gives to those who give, not because of karma or manipulation, but because generosity aligns you with the source of all abundance. It breaks the dam of scarcity. It tells the truth about who you are and what you carry. The moment you give freely is the moment you admit that you already have something worth sharing. Generosity is not always about money. In fact, it rarely begins there. It begins with presence, with listening, with patience, with attention. It shows up in how you speak, how you support, how you uplift. It is the way you show up when you have every excuse not to. The way you serve when no one is watching. The way you give without measuring the return. When you understand this, you begin to see opportunities for generosity everywhere. In your relationships, in your work, in your home, in the ordinary moments that ask for a little more heart. The more generous you become, the more expansive your life feels. Because you are no longer calculating every cost, you are flowing with something deeper than logic. There is a mystery in giving. Often, the moment you release something, life begins to multiply it. The time you thought you didn't have stretches. The energy you thought was depleted returns. The finances you feared to part with come back in unexpected ways. But even if they don't, something greater happens. You grow. You grow in capacity, in character, in trust. You become a person who is no longer defined by what they can cling to, but by what they can release. And in that release, you become powerful, not because you control the outcomes, but because you've risen above the need to. To live generously is to live with a spirit of abundance. It is to believe that there will be enough love, enough provision, enough opportunity, enough time. This belief is not naive. It is not blind. It is deeply rooted in the understanding that the universe is built to respond to openness. The earth does not hoard. The rivers do not hold back. The sun does not ration its warmth. Nature gives, freely, consistently, without fear of lack. When you live in harmony with this flow, you stop overthinking the cost of giving. You start recognizing the cost of withholding. Because what you hold too tightly eventually decays. What you give with love returns multiplied. Some fear that giving makes them vulnerable, that open hands invite exploitation or exhaustion. And yes, boundaries matter. Wisdom matters. But true generosity is not about giving recklessly. It's about giving from a rooted place. It is not about draining yourself to prove your worth. It is about sharing from your overflow. The more you tend to your inner world, the more you fill your soul with truth, the more naturally your life becomes a source of nourishment for others. You are not responsible for everyone's healing, but you are responsible for offering what is genuinely yours to give. And often, that is more than you think. There is a deep joy that comes from generosity, not the kind of temporary high you get from applause, but the steady warmth that comes from knowing you are part of something bigger. Every time you give, you interrupt the myth of separation. You remind yourself, in the world, that we are connected, that we are not here just to survive, but to support one another. This joy is not loud, but it is lasting. It becomes a well you draw from in hard seasons. It becomes a memory that reminds you who you are when life tries to convince you otherwise. The habit of giving also transforms how you receive. It makes you more humble, more grateful, more receptive. Because once you've tasted what it means to give freely, you can recognize the beauty in receiving without guilt. You stop apologizing for your blessings. You stop shrinking your gratitude. You stop sabotaging your good. You know that receiving is not indulgence. It is the other half of generosity. And you receive not just for yourself, but so you can give again. The cycle continues, and you begin to understand that abundance is not about having, it is about flowing. If you want to change your life, start by changing your posture. Look at your hands. Are they clenched or open? Are you holding back, waiting for a guarantee before you give? Or are you living with the kind of trust that knows there is always more where that came from? Generosity is not a strategy, it is a lifestyle. It is how you greet the world. It is how you wake up in the morning and choose to be a source rather than a sink. And the more you live this way, the more your life begins to reflect the law of generosity, that what you pour out in love never returns empty. You do not need to wait for overflow to begin giving. Giving is what creates overflow. It is what tells the soil you are ready for increase. It is what says to life, I trust you enough to let go. And when you do, life responds in kind. Not always immediately, not always in the way you imagined, but always in the way you need most. Because generosity, when rooted in truth, never returns void. It may take time. It may look different than expected, but it always leaves you fuller than it found you. Chapter 12. Cycles within cycles, micro-seasons in a single day. It's easy to think of life seasons as long stretches of time marked by major shifts, years of growth, months of hardship, whole chapters of becoming. But the truth is, seasons are not only measured in decades or even years. They unfold in weeks and days, sometimes even in a single moment. Within each day, there are micro-seasons playing out, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual shifts that mirror the larger rhythms of life. Just as the earth rotates through morning, midday, evening, and night, so too do we move through cycles of clarity, confusion, action, rest, inspiration, and stillness. And learning to recognize these micro-seasons is one of the most powerful ways to live in harmony with ourselves and in rhythm with the world. Each day carries its own version of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. There are hours of freshness when your mind is sharp, your heart is hopeful, and your creativity flows easily. That is your morning spring, regardless of what the clock says. Then come the hours of productivity, where the work is heavier and the pace quickens. This is your internal summer, where energy is poured out, where effort deepens, and where you do the necessary tending. Later, there is a natural slowing, a sense that your energy is shifting inward, that it's time to gather the fruits of the day, to pause and reflect. This is your autumn. And finally, there are the hours of evening and night when your body and spirit call for rest, stillness, and restoration. These are the winters of your day, and they are just as essential as the seasons of motion. When you ignore these rhythms, life begins to feel harder than it needs to. You find yourself trying to produce during your internal winter, to rest during your internal summer, to harvest when nothing has had time to grow. Frustration sets in, not because you're incapable, but because you're out of sync with your own natural cycles. Most people run on schedules that ignore their inner seasons completely. They work because the clock says work, not because their energy is aligned. They rest only when exhaustion demands it, not because they've learned to honor their own capacity. But the soul does not obey clocks. It responds to flow. It responds to honesty. And when you begin to observe your internal rhythms, you begin to reclaim a kind of power that most people don't know they've lost. Noticing your micro-seasons requires presence. You must slow down enough to feel what is true in the moment. Am I in a spring space, ready to create, to begin, to imagine? Am I in a summer stretch, focused, building, executing? Am I in an autumn mood, wrapping things up, evaluating, preparing to let go? Or am I in a winter moment, empty, quiet, inward, still? No answer is wrong. The only mistake is ignoring the question. Because once you name your season, you can choose what to do with it. You can stop forcing yourself into productivity when what you really need is rest. You can stop wasting a creative burst because you don't think it's the right time to start something new. You can give yourself permission to move with your truth, not just your obligations. This awareness extends beyond your day. It moves through relationships, projects, ideas. You may find that a conversation is entering its autumn, that a friendship is moving into winter. You may sense that a creative endeavor is in its spring, not quite formed but quietly stirring. Or that your body is in summer mode, calling for discipline and focus. When you become fluent in the language of seasons, you stop panicking when things shift. You stop trying to hold on to what is fading. You stop resisting the call to slow down. You start trusting that every micro-season is part of a larger rhythm. And the more you cooperate with it, the more energy, clarity, and peace you experience. Living seasonally within the day also transforms your relationship with time. You begin to realize that time is not just something to manage or conquer, it is something to partner with. You become less reactive, less frantic. You stop measuring your value by how much you produce in a single hour and begin measuring it by how aligned you feel. This shift in measurement is radical. It changes the way you plan, the way you work, the way you rest. It makes you more efficient because your effort is timed with your energy. It makes you more grounded because you are no longer pretending that you can be all things at all times. You begin to live with grace. You begin to move with wisdom. This daily rhythm also opens up space for renewal. Because when you realize that each day contains its own cycle, you stop placing so much pressure on any one moment. A bad morning does not mean a bad day. A tired afternoon does not mean a wasted opportunity. Just like the seasons of nature, your internal weather is always changing. You may wake in winter and move into spring by noon. You may feel summer's drive and autumn's reflection in a single conversation. And when you allow this to be true, you become far more gentle with yourself. You stop living in extremes. You stop catastrophizing the slow hours and over-identifying with the fast ones. You begin to trust that every moment is part of something unfolding. Honoring these micro-seasons does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means approaching your life with a deeper intelligence. It means designing your days in a way that reflects your real energy, your real focus, your real truth. This might mean shifting your schedule, It might mean saying no more often. It might mean carving out sacred time to listen, to reset, to realign. But whatever it requires, the result is always the same. You become more present, more effective, more alive. You stop chasing balance and start living in rhythm. The people who appear most at peace are not necessarily those with the simplest lives. They are often the ones who have learned how to move with their seasons, not against them. They know when to push and when to pause, when to speak and when to listen, when to build and when to wait. They have made peace with the flow, and in doing so, they have become their own source of clarity, their own compass. This is not a personality trait. It is a choice, a practice, a daily remembering. So start where you are. Ask yourself what season this hour is in, what it asks of you, what it invites you to release or embrace. Move from that answer, not from obligation or guilt, and watch how your life begins to soften. Watch how your energy begins to multiply. You are not meant to be a machine. You are meant to be in motion, in rhythm, and flow. Your power is not in how much you can force. It is in how honestly you can live. And that honesty begins with learning to honor the cycles within cycles, the sacred seasons unfolding inside each and every day. Chapter 13. Let the dead things die. Pruning, release, and sacred goodbyes. There comes a time in every life when something has to end. A habit, a relationship, a way of thinking, a role you've played for too long. It may not be dramatic. It may not be marked by conflict or collapse. Sometimes, it's just a quiet knowing. A sense that the energy has left, the meaning has dissolved, the usefulness has expired. And yet, despite that clarity, we often resist the ending. We cling to what no longer serves us. We stay longer than we should, speak words we no longer mean, invest in places that no longer return anything of value. Not because we're foolish, but because letting go feels like loss. Even when something is clearly over, the act of release can still feel like grief. Letting go is not something most of us are taught to do well. We are taught to hold on, to fix, to fight, to salvage. We're told that quitting is weakness, that walking away is failure. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stop trying to resuscitate what is already gone. Not everything that ends is a mistake. Not everything that fades is a failure. There is a difference between what dies too soon and what dies right on time. And when something has finished its purpose in your life, it is not only wise to release it, it is essential, because holding on to the dead things blocks the living ones from entering. In nature, pruning is not cruelty. It is wisdom. A tree that is never pruned will eventually stop producing fruit. It becomes overgrown, tangled, burdened by branches that drain energy but offer nothing in return. Gardeners prune not to harm the tree, but to strengthen it. They remove what is no longer vital so that new life can flourish. The same principle applies to our lives. We must be willing to cut back what is no longer aligned with our future. This might be a project that once mattered, but now feels heavy. It might be a relationship that's grown one-sided, a belief that keeps you small, a role that asks you to dim your light. You know what needs to go. The knowing is rarely the problem. The courage to act on that knowing is. We fear endings because we misunderstand them. We think of them as final, as failures, as the absence of hope. But endings are transitions. They are sacred thresholds. They clear the space for something new. And while they often arrive with grief, they also carry a strange mercy, a release, a relief. Sometimes we stay in something so long we forget how much it is costing us. We adapt to the low-level exhaustion, the subtle resentment, the quiet disappointment. We convince ourselves that things are fine, even as our soul becomes restless. But endings do not lie. They tell the truth we've been avoiding. They show us what we've outgrown, what we've tolerated for too long, what no longer matches who we are becoming. Letting the dead things die is not about bitterness or blame. It is about reverence, about honoring the role something played, even as you release it. You can be grateful for a season and still know it's over. You can bless a person and still walk away. You can appreciate the lesson and still stop the pattern. This is maturity, not forcing everything to last forever, but learning to love without clinging, to trust that if something is meant to stay, it will have the strength to endure. And if it doesn't, that does not diminish its value. It simply means its time has passed. What makes letting go so painful is that we confuse it with rejection. We think, if I let this go, I'm giving up on myself, on love, on loyalty. But letting go is not giving up. It is giving in to the truth, to the timing, to the reality that holding on is not the same as holding together. You can wind up on something broken for years, but that doesn't make it whole. You can stay in a room with no light and call it home, but that doesn't mean you're living. At some point, you have to choose life over familiarity. You have to choose expansion over comfort. And that means releasing what no longer breathes. There is a deep stillness that follows true release. After the tears, after the final conversation, after the last time you try to make it work, a silence sets in. It is not empty. It is sacred. It is there. Silence of clearing, of space being made, of air returning to a room that has been too crowded for too long. At first, this silence might feel like absence. But soon, it begins to feel like freedom, like possibility, like the first breath after being underwater. The more you sit in it, the more you realize you are not lost. You are being recentered. You are being prepared for what comes next. Letting go is a discipline, a muscle we must build and return to again and again. Life will continue to ask you to release, sometimes gently, sometimes with force. You will outgrow dreams, cities, relationships, versions of yourself. And each time, you will have to choose. Will you hold on because it's known? Or will you trust the unknown because it's true? There is no formula, only the quiet wisdom inside you. The part of you that always knows when it's time. That knows endings are not the enemy. They are the evidence of movement, of evolution, of growth. So if you find yourself in a season where something is dying, do not panic. Do not rush to replace it or revive it. Sit with it. Listen. Ask what it came to teach you. Thank it. And then, when the time comes, let it go. Not with resentment, but with reverence. Not with fear, but with trust. The death of one thing is the beginning of another. The falling of leaves makes space for new buds. The clearing of the old reveals the sky. You do not need to carry what is no longer alive. You do not need to explain why something no longer fits. You only need to honor the truth and trust the process. Let what is ending end. Let what has died stay buried. Your hands must be empty to receive what is next. And what is next will be better not because the past was worthless, but because the future is waiting to meet the person you are becoming. Chapter 14. Becoming a living harvest when your life feeds others. There comes a time in your journey when you begin to realize that the purpose of your growth was never just for yourself. The healing you fought for, the wisdom you've gained, the breakthroughs you've experienced, none of it was meant to stop with you. Everything that has taken root in your life, everything that has grown in the hidden places, everything that once felt like a battle you had to face alone, is now becoming nourishment for others. You become the evidence. Your life becomes the message. You no longer just harvest for yourself, you become the harvest. You become the one who carries provision, insight, and peace into rooms where others are still searching for it. And you begin to live with the quiet awareness that your journey now feeds those who are still finding their way. To become a living harvest is not to become a hero. It is not about being perfect or arriving at some polished, elevated state. It is about embodiment. It is about carrying the fruit of your experience with humility and generosity. It is about recognizing that your presence, your words, your story, your energy, all of it has value. And not just in transactional or professional ways, but in deeply human ways. You've been through something. You've walked the fire. You've faced the silence. You've waded through winters and labored through summers. That history is not a liability, it is an offering. And when you allow others to eat from the tree of your becoming, you step into a sacred kind of service. This kind of service is not always loud. It is not always public. Sometimes it looks like holding space for someone's grief without rushing them toward hope. Sometimes it means being the one who doesn't flinch when others share their fear or doubt. It's in the way you speak truth without needing to fix everything. It's in your capacity to remain steady while others fall apart. People may not even realize what they're receiving from you, but they will feel the fruit. They will feel the peace you carry because you've earned it in the hard way. They will feel the strength in your silence because you sat with your own questions long enough to not be afraid of theirs. They will feel your hope, not because it's loud, but because it's real. Not because it's naive, but because it has endured. The most nourishing people are rarely the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who live aligned, who move with intention, who don't need to prove anything but carry a quiet, unshakable sense of truth. You don't need to preach to be powerful. You don't need to position yourself as a teacher to be transformative. When you live as a living harvest, your very existence becomes a resource. Not because you try to be, but because you are. The fruit is visible. The branches are strong. And people come not because you advertised yourself, but because your life has become shelter. What most people don't realize is that becoming this kind of person requires surrender. You do not arrive here by branding yourself or building a platform. You arrive here by choosing growth over comfort again and again. You arrive here by saying yes to the pruning, the waiting, the hard conversations, the lonely nights. You arrive here by staying faithful in the quiet seasons when no one was watching. There is no shortcut to depth. There is no fast track to rootedness. And yet, when you finally begin to see the fruit in your life, when others begin to gather around what you've cultivated, it all starts to make sense. Every hidden hour was not wasted. Every painful moment was planting something. You are now standing in a harvest you didn't fully know you were growing. But with harvest comes responsibility, not the pressure to be perfect, but the invitation to be intentional. You begin to understand that your words carry weight, that your actions ripple out further than you think, that people are watching, not to critique, but because they are looking for evidence that peace is possible, that healing is real, that growth doesn't have to mean burnout. You don't have to perform for them. You only need to be honest. Authenticity is more nourishing than perfection. And people are not fed by your image. They are fed by your integrity. As you walk through life carrying your harvest, you will begin to notice where the fruit needs to be shared. It may not be on a stage or in a spotlight. It may be across the table from someone who's quietly unraveling. It may be in a room where no one knows your story but feels your presence. It may be in a decision to serve where no one applauds. These are the holy places. This is where your harvest matters most. Not where it gets the most attention, but where it meets the deepest hunger. And yet, even as you share what you've cultivated, you must continue to tend your own soil. You are not a machine. You are not a limitless source. You are still human, still growing, still evolving. Generosity does not mean depletion. Pouring out does not mean self-neglect. The most sustainable harvests come from those who honor their cycles, who rest when needed, who say no when it's right, who stay connected to their source. You do not become a living harvest by burning out. You become one by staying rooted, staying aligned, staying honest. There is no finish line to this work, no moment when you become so whole that you stop needing grace. But there is a shift, a profound one, that happens when you move from living for yourself to living with the awareness that your life is not just about you, that your story, your healing, your peace, your wisdom were never meant to stop at your skin. They are meant to flow, to feed, to serve. And when that shift happens, everything changes. You stop measuring success by what you accumulate. You start measuring it by what you can give away and still feel full. This is the essence of overflow. Not just having more than enough for yourself, but becoming a source for others. Not just surviving, but nourishing. Not just receiving, but becoming. Becoming a living harvest is not about becoming impressive. It's about becoming useful, faithful, true. It's about showing up in the world with the kind of presence that heals without needing to be noticed. And when you do that, your life becomes a blessing that multiplies, not in dramatic displays, but in quiet, consistent acts of love, integrity, and truth. You become a place where others remember that growth is possible, that peace is real, and that healing can last. Chapter 15. Living seasonally, abundantly, eternally. When you finally begin to see your life through the lens of seasons, everything changes. You stop forcing. You stop fearing. You stop rushing. Instead, you begin to move with trust, with grace, with rhythm. You learn to honor the time you are in without needing it to look like someone else's. You embrace the ebb and the flow. You no longer panic when things slow down. You no longer define yourself by the speed of your progress. You stop demanding that every day be a harvest, and you learn to find peace in the planting, power in the tending, and purpose in the resting. Living seasonally is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming wise. There will always be another cycle, another beginning, another ending, another opportunity to learn, to grow, to release, to receive. You are not stuck. You are not too late. Life is still moving, and as long as you are willing to pay attention, you will always know what season you are in. This is the difference between surviving and living. Surviving makes everything an emergency. Living makes everything a teacher. When you embrace the truth that life is not linear, but cyclical, you no longer need to rush towards some imaginary arrival point. You no longer chase completion as if it will grant you peace. You understand that peace is something you carry, not something you find at the end of the road. Living abundantly is not about accumulating more. It's about being more present, more open, more aligned. It's about seeing what you already have, already carry, already are, and realizing it is enough. It's about choosing to walk through each day with the quiet certainty that you are part of something greater, something flowing, something wise and good. You start to notice how life provides, not always in the way you asked, but always in the way you need. You begin to trust the silence, honor the waiting, bless the endings. You stop gripping life so tightly and begin to hold it with reverence. You understand that abundance is not something you earn. It is something you receive when you are ready. And readiness is not perfection. It is willingness. You will still have hard days. You will still face resistance, loss, confusion. Seasons will still shift abruptly. Dreams may die. Plans may change. That is the nature of a full, honest life. But the difference now is that you are no longer surprised by these shifts. You recognize them for what they are, invitations to trust deeper, to grow slower, to surrender quicker. You no longer see struggle as punishment but as preparation. You no longer shrink in the face of delay because you've learned that time can be a gift. You no longer grieve endings the same way because you've tasted the beauty of what follows them. You become anchored in something stronger than certainty. You become anchored in truth. Truth does not change with the weather. It does not waver with the calendar. Truth remains. And the deepest truth is this: life is always working for your good, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it hurts, even when it's quiet. The soil of your life is rich with potential. The roots of your purpose run deeper than you know. And every experience, every joy, every disappointment, every delay is feeding something within you. Feeding your faith, feeding your wisdom, feeding your capacity to live and love fully. To live seasonally and abundantly is also to live eternally, not in the sense of escaping time or resisting death, but in the sense of living with a kind of presence that transcends the moment. It is choosing to see the divine in the ordinary, to see sacred meaning in what seems small. It is realizing that everything is connected, everything is teaching you, everything is unfolding according to a rhythm older than your worries. It is knowing that you are not separate from nature, you are part of it. You are not apart from abundance, you are woven into it. The same cycles that govern the tides govern you. The same energy that grows the trees grows you. And when you live in alignment with that, you no longer need to chase meaning. You live it. Overflow becomes a way of being, not just an event. You give without fear. You receive without guilt. You speak without performing. You rest without shame. You move through the world not as someone trying to prove your worth, but as someone already aware of it. You are not afraid to change. You are not afraid to pause. You are not afraid to begin again. You know that every ending is followed by a beginning. Every quiet season is preparing you for one that is loud with blow. Every surrender is an opening. Every harvest is a confirmation. This is your life, not a race, but a rhythm. Not a ladder, but a cycle. Not a competition, but a conversation. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow it. When the leaves fall, let them. When the soil calls you to rest, honor it. When the energy returns, rise with it. When the fruit comes, gather it with joy. When it's time to share, do so freely. When it's time to release, do so fully. Let the rhythm carry you. Let the rhythm feed you. Let the rhythm lead you. You were never meant to live by force. You were meant to live by flow. And everything you've walked through, every winter of silence, every spring of new beginnings, every summer of labor, every autumn of return, has been preparing you for a life that overflows. Not once, not occasionally, but continually. Season after season, cycle after cycle, deeper, fuller, truer. This is the abundance you were made for. This is the rhythm you were born to trust. This is the life that waits for you when you finally let go of the chase and step into the flow. Let it carry you now. Let it overflow. Let it return to you, again and again, 100-fold. Thanks for watching or listening to Audio Chapter Hub.